that you're using, make sure you share it with about 50 people and tell them to tune in today, because you're definitely going to get some nuggets for yourself as well as individuals you can share with. All right, but before any further ado, I want to give honor to who honor is due, and that is the visionaries of this show. And it's his birthday today. It's his 50th birthday. So happy birthday, Apostle Dr. Senior Pastor Lincoln Coffey. We miss you, we honor you, we respect you, and thank you so much for envisioning this Christian Talk Forum for us to talk to real people about real issues. And of course, Assistant Pastor, First Lady April Coffey, the co-founder and visionary of this show as well. We love you, and we know that you're away celebrating Pastor's birthday. We appreciate you. And in the absence, my co-host, Pastor Damietta Jeffers. All right, see you next week. Joined on the panel with us today is another one of our wonderful co-hosts. You've seen her here before several times as a guest, and she is a regular co-host, and that is none other than Dr. Elizabeth Jennings. Hi, Liz. I am so excited about what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're able to continue the conversation and dive a little bit deeper. We covered some really great points last week, and so just wonderful that we can continue this conversation.
Yes, yes. What are you hoping individuals take away from this series where we're talking about depression and suicidal ideation?
Yeah, with Overcomers Talk, we are definitely at a point where we want to strengthen everyone's mental health. We also want people to take away some tools that they're able to use and apply, how to identify what's going on if they're dealing with depression, what are some strategies that they can use to address that so that it doesn't lead to suicide and some of those tragic things that could happen if it's not addressed earlier.
Exactly. Because one of the things I think people, and we will learn more from our panel, that they miss is that depression, it doesn't just happen in adulthood, right? That children also experience depression, and it manifests in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And so those are some of the issues I definitely want our audience to see today. But before we continue, I want to introduce our panel to you. We are joined here by Samantha Earhart from Texas A&M University, and you are a licensed professional counselor.
That's right. Dr. Samantha Earhart Laraga. I'm an assistant professor at A&M Central Texas here in Killeen, and I am a licensed professional counselor and have been almost 20 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of different issues with depression and suicide over the years.
Yeah, so I know you're definitely going to have some nuggets to share with us today. You know, earlier I said, Dr. Samantha, that during COVID in particular, we saw an increase of depression. Is that something that you would find to be also true in your experience?
Yes, we have seen an increase in symptoms of depression. Substance use also has increased. We don't have the research yet. Obviously, COVID is still happening, so we don't know. But we have seen anecdotal evidence that it is happening. And so being shut in, not being able to access your normal resources and having to really switch your lives around has really impacted your well-being.
Yeah. And so we definitely want you to tune in and hear more about this as we continue with our panel today. The last time we spoke of this topic, we had Victor Hall and Tamara with us. And so they were going to be sharing some more of their story. Vic, we're so happy to have you back.
It's good to be back. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming back. We told you we were going to have you back, so we're very, very happy to have you. And Tamara, thank you for coming back as well. We're also joined with a new panelist, and that is Jeanette T. Bugs.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And I know, Jeanette, you wanted to also share some of your experiences with depression. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
I'm the mother of 5, grandmother of 4. And
There's no way you're a grandmother.
I am a grandmother of 4. But my first time attempting suicide myself, I was 12.
Wow.
And that stemmed from sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also the mother and wife of 2 amazing, strong suicide survivors. My husband has tried several times, and my daughter back in November, right after Thanksgiving, matter of fact, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, attempted suicide and actually flatlined twice.
Wow.
And by the grace of God, she's still here and still fighting. So,
Thank you so much for being here and being so transparent in sharing your story. And I can tell you, and I can speak for the panel, that we are thankful. We're grateful that you are here
thank you.
today to share that with us. And having someone who have seen you with your family, I'm thankful
Thank you.
that you are here today.
Thank you.
I saw you were about to say something, Dr. Elizabeth.
Yeah, just to tag along with that, there's just something about being able to have a space where conversations can occur.
Yeah.
The more we're able to do that, the more we're able to kind of debuff the myths that it's something that we can't talk about, then we're able to express and relate and realize so many people are dealing with these underlying issues. And so just being able to start that conversation, generate it, it's providing so much help. So thank you all for being here today.
Yes, each of you. And we know that this is a difficult topic for a lot of people to explore. So we definitely want to thank our guests for being here and being so transparent in sharing how you overcame. Right? How you overcame, because this is what this show is about. And one of the things we also want to acknowledge, in overcoming doesn't mean that it's not still a struggle.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean that it's not still a struggle. And so, Jeanette, I want to go back to your story when you say that the first attempt was when you were 12 years old. Kind of talk me through what was going on in your life around that time where you felt, I guess, hopeless would be the word.
I was adopted at 5 by my mother's friend to keep me from going to the system.
Okay.
But because she was friends with my bio mom, I still had a relationship and was forced to go over there and still be involved. And I was sexually abused over there. And I finally just got the courage to stop it at 12 because he pulled the gun on me about a week before, found the gun and pulled it back on him, and I had enough. But it was just that feeling of being given up at 5. I mean, I knew who she was. And then having the sexual assault happen pretty much on a weekly basis. And this is a woman who's supposed to protect me. And I thought at that point, why am I living? Obviously, I wasn't meant to be here. It was an accident. And it was also my first time experimenting with drugs because I had a bunch of older friends and they were doing drugs. And I knew that drugs would overdose at 12. So I asked one of them to give me some crystal meth, and I tried to overdose.
Yeah.
At 12. And my cousin, who was my best friend as well, she saved my life. And so if it wasn't for my cousin Dawn, I wouldn't be here from that one. But the trauma in my youth didn't go away. I still had to deal with a lot of other abuse and physical abuse and emotional neglect and abuse. And at 17, I was raped by a family friend. And his family protected him. And so at that point, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be this doormat, so to speak, for people. But I didn't want to, so I tried again. And this time I tried using just prescription drugs. And I do not know how I survived. I do not know why I survived. Knowing what I know now, having the nursing degree, I really don't know how I'm here after what I took.
Yeah.
But I am. Especially because when I did that, when I was pregnant with our youngest daughter, who's also a suicide survivor. And over the years, you feel hopeless and dirty after that. You feel like you don't belong, you're not good enough for anybody. And I tried between the ages of 21 to about 35, I tried 4 more times. And each time it was either, one time my mother saved me, my bio mom, because she did get better and we did have a relationship until she passed. And she became my best friend and she saved me once. Another friend of mine saved me one other time, and the other 2 times was 2 of my kids. And it's been a battle even now. And I love what you said earlier, that even though we have overcome, it's still a daily struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still fight with, am I good enough?
Yeah.
Am I worth it? I still feel dirty at times when I think about the abuse and all the things I've gone through. And there's plenty of times where I feel like I don't fit in the world. Even with my church family, and I love you guys more than anything, and I still feel like I don't fit in. So there's a lot of battle of the depression. And the only thing that saves me is the grace of God, that now I'm at a place where I don't want to kill myself, but the depression is still heavy and it's hard. But right before we came to Colleen, so we have 5 kids and we numbered them to make it easier for us. Number 4, she's the youngest of the girls. We had just finished Thanksgiving, and that Wednesday after, she took a bottle of my pain pills. Tramadol to be exact, which anybody that's in the medical field knows that many pills at 750 milligrams a piece, she shouldn't be here. My husband found her in full catonic seizure, and we rushed her to the hospital where she flatlined twice, and I am blessed to have the ICU nurse she had and brought her back. She's a wonderful mom. She's a gorgeous girl. I mean, not just because she's my daughter, but I mean, just from what I hear from people. And I didn't know the pain until after, when we started going to therapy and talking, that she was carrying. And I didn't know that some of it was from me because of the pain I was still carrying that I didn't heal from. And she's gone through therapy now, and she still is in therapy. Glory be to God for that, because it was such a struggle to get her to agree to go. And she's doing a lot better. We talk once a week. She has 2 boys, so I mean, her hands are full, because the youngest one is, I want to say 16 months, maybe 14. He's a little rambunctious ball of energy, but we try to talk at least once a week. And my first thing I do after, of course, loving on the grandbaby is, how are you doing? And I make it a point now, because I realize that in my healing that I'm still doing, I have to also help her with her healing.
Yeah.
And something that I was never asked, even through my healing, and my husband's barely gotten to it, how am I doing? And not the general, hey, how you doing? No, really just, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear okay. I don't want to hear I'm fine. I want to truly know, how are you doing? And what can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
As a mother, we want to protect our kids, but I realized I had to change the way I mothered, because she's an adult. And I had to realize that she's my daughter, but I'm also need to be a friend through this.
Mm-hmm.
And just hold her hand and walk with her, not pull her.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to do from my own hurt, is let her know that she has somebody to walk with her.
Yeah, yeah. And I think oftentimes one of the things, Dr. Liz, Dr. Samantha, is that we have our own root pain, right? We have our own pains, our own root, and then we don't see how it affects our children. And so I really like what you said, and I like that you identified that pain, that your daughter felt. Some of it came from you, but some of that pain that you felt was also as a result of the rejection and the abandonment that you felt from your mother, whom you were able to resolve things with before she passed. And so, when we talk about depression, like we were talking with Vic and Tamara, sometimes you got that, when you trace it back, you find the root stems from something that happened, some trauma, right, in childhood. And you continue with that trauma. It kind of grows with you like a cancer until you're able to address and say, and I believe it was Dr. Liz in the series the last time, where you got to go back and say, when did this happen and how did it make me feel? Right? What did I say to myself when it happened? And I heard you say it, Jeanette, that you didn't feel worthy. You didn't feel like you belong. You didn't feel like you were accepted. And that was something that you nursed, right, through young adulthood and adulthood, and until you were able to identify it, although you still struggle with it, you were not able to begin to heal from it.
Yeah, I think that's so key, Carrie Ann. The way you talked about and just hearing the story about sometimes when we go back, the initial thing is, what did I do wrong? Like, how can I fix this before even identifying that root cause of it? And so I'm so grateful that we do have Dr. Samantha here also. Yes. And I'd like to actually just have you chime in from an earlier point, the cycle that we heard about that was experienced from mother to daughter. Do you see that often happening in your profession when you're dealing with depression and suicide attempts?
It does tend to run in families. So there sometimes is a genetic component to it, but being a mom myself, a lot of our behaviors, our attitudes, the way we feel, the way we view the world, our children learn that from us. Yeah. And then they pick up on our own stuff. I mean, we all have stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they pick up on it. And the way we handle our things, they learn how to do. So we perpetuate it generation to generation. Mm-hmm. This is why I always, when I work with parents and with kids, I encourage all the parents, anything that's coming up, take your child to counseling. Yeah. Take them to somebody, talk to somebody. And when we have teenagers, never be afraid to ask them, one, how are they doing? The way you said, really ask. But two, to ask them flat out, are you having thoughts of suicide? Yeah. Are you thinking about killing yourself? We're not going to plant the idea in their heads. We're going to have that conversation that we need to have to prevent something like this from happening so we can stop the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's very good, Dr. Samantha. I know, Vic, the last time that we spoke, you talked about the struggle with your 16-year-old son. And some of the depression that you experienced as a child, you begin to see it in some of your children. If you could elaborate on that.
It's definitely something that caught me off guard, but I'm happy that I was able to recognize it. A lot of times as a parent, I try to be able to relate to my children, and typically it's with things that interest them. It's typically with things that, how am I going to have, fun with my son or my daughter? How am I going to just have just a regular conversation? But I overlooked the emotional connection or being able to relate to them emotionally. And again, it was just simply just having a conversation, an open conversation with my kids. We actually were just sitting around watching TV, and I just felt like we needed to have a unguarded conversation about who Dad was in relation to who they are. So I can relate to them a little bit more emotionally. And my son was the main one to stand up and say, well, yeah, I suffer from depression. And he continued to explain how with COVID, his depression was heightened or elevated. And he was afraid to even tell me initially because he is growing up in an environment where talking about depression isn't okay. It's not something that people take serious in his environment. They tend to brush it off and dismiss him. But for some reason, he felt compelled to open up to me, and I was thankful for it because it led to a deeper connection between he and I that we both had kind of been searching for over the last 4 or 5 years. And since then, we've been able to constantly have that conversation. And like we just said on panel, how are you doing? It's not a question that I just take lightly anymore. When I ask the question, I expect an honest answer from him. Or from any of my kids, or anybody that I love, I expect that answer. Tell me, really, how you're doing. And it's allowed us to continue to have that conversation and grow and connect to each other emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. And I just wanted to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more. Sometimes we find ourselves in the tragedy or the red zone period of it where we bring up the conversations and we're talking about it, and hopefully we're able to talk to our youth. But when I think about prevention and trying to start there, and just trying for parents who are curious about how do you even start the dialogue, right? If there's nothing going on that you know of, but you don't really know how to engage in a conversation or even start it, like where do you go? How does a parent prepare themselves to initiate that conversation with their youth? youth. Dr. Samantha, do you have any tips on that at all?
Sure, there's resources online. I mean, the suicide hotline has a website with resources, and I could definitely link you up some different resources. But the best thing a parent can do, I think, with anything is to educate themselves. Let's find the information out there, figure out a way, a comfortable time to bring it up, and let's have the conversation. Even if it's an awkward or uncomfortable conversation, we have to have it. And so for me, as a parent, it's educating myself first and feeling emotionally ready to have it, and then go in there and do it. But yes, there's a lot of resources online. The SAMHSA posts resources. All the government websites have resources on suicide prevention, and then we have specific resources through the American Counseling Association. This is Suicide Prevention Month, actually, and so they have resources posted up there as well. And so right now, I mean, we've got on our phones access to all this information. You know, let's bring it up while we're on social media. We can look. Social media is doing a pretty good job of linking us to resources as well.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And so if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking to a panel in our series of depression and suicidal ideation. And so if you would like some resources, wherever you are watching from, we know that this show airs throughout the United States, the Caribbean, parts of Africa, as well as England. Simply use your Google, right? Google in your area ideas on suicide prevention as well as mental health. You can also type in NAMI, NAMI, right? And you are able to get resources on mental health. But what I hear is the first step is have the conversation. You want to ask, are you okay? And when you ask the question, are you okay? You have to listen. You have to wait for the answer and be prepared to hear something that you didn't necessarily want to hear. And then be prepared to have those resources, right, to address whatever answer you get. But the first step is ask the question. And if you are someone that's experiencing depression, isolation right now, and you would like some help, definitely you can reach out to us at Open Fire. That's openfireif.org, and we will try to connect you to some resources. All right? That's openfireif.org. Send an email to us, and we will reach back and connect you with resources. If you're watching us on Facebook and you would like some resources, just send us a message in Messenger, and someone will connect you with some resources in whatever area you are in. All right? And so the question that I would have for Tamara, Vic, or Jeanette, going through your bouts of depression, because I think, and we said this the last time, we've all experienced some form of depression. The difference is individuals who are not able to come from it, right, after a few hours or even after a few days. How did you determine that this is where I am and I need help? What was that factor for you?
I think for me, like I said, I'm a big researcher. And for me, everyone around, my friends, you know, people that were close to me, I saw that it wasn't as bad for them, you know, that they were able to shift. And so I began to pay attention to the people around me, like, okay, this is an area that's an issue for me. So I began to research it. And then that's how I found out that, okay, this is depression. This is something I need to maybe seek help with, and started, you know, allowing my mind to receive, okay, that maybe I do need to go to counseling. Maybe I do need to go get help. But for me, it started with noticing that, okay, my behavior and my inability to shift, that it wasn't natural, that it wasn't healthy.
So you were intentional in saying, okay, this is not how I normally function, right? And I need to address that. What areas in your life did you see it affect that you realized that this is not a norm for me?
Especially when the shift came with my children, being able to handle life as far as being a parent, being a single parent. My work life was affected. And then just my relationships, me being able to handle the twists and turns of everyday relationships, relationship with my mother, my siblings, my church family, just all my relationships I'm noticing that, okay, they're really affected, you know, my work life, you know, in instability in keeping employment, things like that. So.
Yeah, yeah. And I ask that question because I know someone out there might say, okay, I have some of the similar things. You know, there's issues with my children or my work and different systems that I'm connected with, but it's them. It's not me, right? Because oftentimes people say, well, you know, they're treating me badly, or everyone, and the inability to look at oneself and say, okay, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I have a problem. Maybe I need to take that step and adjust. Or maybe I need to go to therapy, right? Vic, tell us about your journey and what took you to therapy.
It was a number of things that culminated. The other part of the discussion is suicide. But prior to that, the signs were me being disengaged, me losing interest in things that I typically enjoyed. You know, I love sports. You know, then I slowly stopped playing sports. You know, I stopped playing sports and I gained weight. And then, you know, I was in the military at the time. You know, if you're familiar with the military, you have to take a physical fitness test every year. I stopped working out as often as I used to. I just did not care to do the things that I enjoyed prior to. And it went from one thing to another to another. Then next thing you know, I'm really doing nothing to enjoy life. I'm just sitting and sulking in this feeling, this emotional cesspool, right? I'm just sitting there, just living life, or just going through life, not necessarily living. And then the next step was the suicidal ideation. And after the suicidal ideation, I continued to sit in that cesspool. I continued to not enjoy life. It actually made it worse. Yeah, I was actually kind of upset that I didn't carry it through, because now I still suck.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, you're still worthless. Like, but you're still here. So after a few months to a year of constantly feeling that, it was probably like a year-long depression state that I was in. Then that's when I finally said, you know what, my heartbeat was different. My physical, I was impacted so much physically. I just had enough. And I said, okay, let me go ahead and let me try something different. Let's have a conversation that I never had before. And once I did that, I noticed, okay, this is starting to work for me. And I continued that conversation, and that's when I recognized that I was dealing with depression.
Okay. And did you go to therapy immediately after that, or?
I definitely did go to therapy immediately after that. Being a veteran, we have the Military One Source and Veterans Crisis Helpline. And that's something that I did immediately after my suicidal ideation, was establish a relationship with the VA and the mental health clinics at the VA. And I was able to then start from coping classes to group therapy. And then I recognized, okay, the group therapy is okay, but I need to talk to someone more one-on-one and have a more intimate conversation. And that's what led to me having my own personal therapist. And I went from one therapist to another until I found that one that will help me, really, again, establish that relationship to see me through a lot of my problems or issues that I was having.
All right.
So.
All right. I see you nodding over here, Dr. Samantha. Tell me what's going through your mind as you're listening to Tamara and Victor's journey.
Well, two things. One is really noticing in our loved ones, children, adults, anybody in our life, a shift in their everyday behavior. Because when we're feeling depressed or you're beginning to have suicidal ideation, we stop doing the things we enjoy. We stop connecting with the relationships in our life. A lot of things change. So we have to be on the lookout for that. But the other thing that Victor said that struck me is we have to find a therapist that's a good fit. So don't be afraid to shop around. You got to find someone that's going to understand you, get you at that level that you need. And so the first person you see may not be the perfect fit. So look around until you find that.
Awesome. I like that. Look around and find the perfect fit. If you're joining us now, we're talking about depression as well as suicidal ideation in our series. We're going to take a short break so you can hear some of these messages, and we will be right back. Remember, if you are a business owner and you would like to advertise your business during Overcomers Talk, please reach out to us on openfireif.org so that we can advertise your business during the show. Thank you, and we'll be right back. Good afternoon and welcome back to Overcomers Talk. I am Minister Carrie Ann Zamore, and we're talking about our series, Depression and Suicidal Ideation. I'm joined here with a panel. If you're just tuning in, we have Dr. Samantha with us. We also have Jeanette, who is a suicide survivor, as well as Victor Hall, Tamara, Champion Kempner, and Dr. Elizabeth Jennings, our co-host. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you are just joining us, please make sure that you share this with someone. We are sharing a lot of really, really good nuggets here today. Before we left on the break, Dr. Samantha said, find a therapist. It's okay to shop around, but by all means, find a therapist and get some help. Tamara and Vic shared that they were intentional in recognizing some of the signs that changed in their life, their relationships with their children and different people around them, as well as they stopped doing what they loved, right? And so, Dr. Jennings, wow, we've had so much today here already. It begs the question also about our faith, right? So how does our faith carry us through?
Yeah, I think it's so good that we're able to, first of all, generate this conversation. So thank you all for being here and sharing. But I know there's people in our audience who we talk about getting help, whatever that might look like, and there may be some people who struggle with their faith versus seeking out professional help and things like that. I guess I just wanted to start and ask, did any of you struggle with that dilemma in regards to your faith and seeking out professional help, or did you try one area? How was it experience for you?
I definitely struggled with my faith for a very long time. I refused, for a great period, I refused to believe that God would allow me to go through the things that I went through. So that added to my depression, right? Mm-hmm. Because, again, we talked about before with the feeling of loneliness and abandonment. I had grown up knowing that God was always going to be here. But then when I reflected on the different events, God wasn't here. God wasn't for me, here with me there. Like, why do you allow me to go through these things if you really exist? So for a long time, I had that struggle between what I knew was right and what I felt was right. Mm-hmm. So for me, tying in going to see a therapist, it helped me reconnect with my faith. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not strengthening like I want it to be, or like the person to the left and to the right of me, or whoever I might come across, it's starting to help me develop more of my faith and my journey and my pattern. So definitely for a long period of time, I did go through that struggle.
Mm-hmm. Vic, what do you think is causing that connection to come? Is there something that's being answered for you, or what do you think in your process is allowing that healing to happen a little bit more?
I think it's a lot more mental clarity, because I was so consumed with the negative thoughts or the pessimistic thoughts that I wasn't able to open up to receiving my faith again. So me having a clearer state of mind, I'm getting back to the things that I enjoy. I'm discovering things that I enjoy, and that coincides with returning to my faith, right? And enjoying, embarking on that journey again, starting over fresh. I can't pick up where I left off at. But it's just, again, that self-identification of who I am, what I believe, what I love, what I enjoy. It parallels with my faith.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, I think that is so powerful. Mm-hmm. Just in working, and when I talk to people and they're struggling, there is that cloud that they feel. They're so, and sometimes people can get so in their head of why should I do this or should I do that? But to talk about that mental clarity that you receive to allow you to see differently, to allow you to be able to work through those things and to be able to articulate that, I think that's very powerful. So thank you for sharing that. Tamara, what about you? How was your journey with your faith and seeking help, and how did that work together for you?
I've been in church all my life. And so it was never really, as a PK kid and all of that, it's not acceptable to have mental health issues. It's kind of like a black shadow, and you're not supposed to admit that. And then being a worship leader, you're the encourager of the house. You're the one who has the energy. You're leading the people. And so it's not acceptable to struggle with your mental health and to admit it. And so I think for me, what the I went through a process to where I received a revelation that there's nothing outside of God. Medicine is not outside of God. Counselors, there are faith-based counselors. I started out with a faith-based counselor. That was when I started releasing my mind. Okay, this is God. This is something God wants for me. God wants me to learn how to think properly. The Bible tells us that we transform our mind. The way that we transform our mind is through His Word. But sometimes God, He also sends counselors that are able to articulate His Word and to help us understand how to live through the Word. You know what I mean? So I started out with a faith-based counselor. But I've realized I need a little help. At one point, I was seeing a faith-based counselor and another counselor. I had two different counselors at one point in time because I recognized, okay, I got the spiritual side. I know that. But there are some practical things that I need to learn.
Yeah.
I need to learn how to overcome negative thoughts. And this counselor is able to help me with the faith part and reconciling my faith with medicine. This counselor is able to give me the practical. Tam, you got to set goals for yourself. The practical side of it. So, and the biggest thing is that you have to be hungry for it. Yeah. You have to want it, and you have to take accountability for you. You have to, and it's hard. It's hard confronting self. It's hard when you have been done wrong, and these issues that you have are because of what has been done to you and not being protected and not being raised in a healthy environment. So oftentimes it's hard for you to admit that you're the problem, and that you have issues that need to be fixed. But you have to do it. You have to.
Yeah. Very good, Tam. And I just want to say thank you again for being so transparent. And I liked what you said about addressing sometimes things happen to you, right? But then because of those things that happen to you, because of the trauma, as an individual continues to grow, sometimes because that trauma is not dealt with, poor decisions are made, right? Poor decisions are made, and one of the things that we talk about is going back and owning those decisions happened. Yes, bad things happened to me, and as a result of it, because I didn't get the proper nurturing or the proper help that I needed, I made some really bad decisions, and I have to own it, right? I have to own my stuff in order for me to heal from it. And I think, so that's one of the things that we also have to address. I see you nodding, Jeanette.
Yeah. With my daughter's suicide, like I said, it opened a lot of revelations for myself. And one of those was from my hurt, I made the bad decisions. And yes, I had kids very early. And although my kids are never going to be bad decisions to me, it altered my lifestyle.
Yeah.
It altered all my dreams and goals. And I didn't heal from that yet. All I knew was I was going to try to be a better parent than what I had. But I didn't heal. So I didn't realize I was carrying this hurt and this anger and this unworthiness and what I called filth with me into this parenting, and it was reflecting onto my kids. And so her suicide triggered me to actually start realizing I needed help. It made me realize that I wasn't as strong as I thought anymore, and that I still had a lot of areas that were huge blemishes. They weren't just bruises you can cover up with makeup. These are huge blemishes.
Huge blemishes, yeah.
And that was my revelation to start getting therapy for myself, because I realized then that I'm still depressed.
Yeah.
This has been a 40-year battle of me being depressed. I served in the military for 17 years, and when I got out, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Because
so talk to us about that journey of coming back to finding who you are and dealing with the trauma. What did that look like going into therapy? What did that look like?
Ugly and angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at my parents. I was even angry at my adopted parents, even though they were heaven sent. Just angry. I was angry at God. Because why was I feeling like this even now?
Right.
Because literally this is a recent thing. It'll be a year, December 1st, for me. And so I was still angry even at God coming in because I was like, why am I still hurting?
Yeah.
Why have I been this depressed and this angry and this blemished for these 40 years?
Yeah.
It's unfair. And if I'm a child of God, then why is he doing this? Especially coming from the Catholic Church that I was raised in, much like you, the PK and the strictness, and you know the word and you know this, but why? That was my other question of why would God let me suffer like this? But the revelation came through therapy. My first therapy lesson, she was a good fit for me. And it made me realize a lot of it wasn't, the reason I had to go through so much was to build me to where God needed me to be to help others today. And I had to accept that. And I did. And that healing started at that first step of saying, you know what? My walk can help somebody else with their walk.
Yeah.
And although my walk is ugly and has potholes and it's not the most cleanest paved road, it's a road I had to walk because I can help others to prevent that walk.
Yeah. 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 And you're able to share this testimony because, again, by the word of our testimony. And one of the things that we have to realize when we talk about childhood hurts is that we're dealing with a sin problem.
Yes.
Right? And oftentimes we're looking at God and we say, God, why did this happen to me? But we realize that there's good and then there's evil.
Yeah.
And as a child, we're innocent. But when you deal with sin, you're dealing with corruption of the mind, the soul, the spirit, and you're dealing with somebody who is not in their right mind. And we're not talking about a mental health illness. We're talking about sin.
Yes.
Right? We're talking about sin, the influence of sin, and what someone will do when they don't have a spirit of Christ that lives in them. It doesn't matter who they hurt, right? It doesn't matter if you are a little child, right? But we know that God is still a God of love, but this world is a world of sin. And in a world of sin, there's a lot of hurts, right? And then how do we overcome? Thank you so much, Jeanette, for sharing that with us. And I'm going to keep on saying, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here today. And so, Dr. Samantha, you're getting a whole lot today. You're getting a whole lot. And I know there's somebody out there who is looking at this show who may be feeling, you know, I'm not too sure how to even start this whole therapy thing. I'm not sure about it. It's not necessarily my Christian faith, but there's so much I gotta talk about, and I don't even know where to start, right? How do they even start?
Well, I mean, it's a start. Even knowing that I need to start is a start.
Yeah.
So that's
I like
fantastic.
that. Knowing that I need to start is a start. So first of all,
Yeah.
self-awareness.
Self-awareness is
Right?
very important.
Self-awareness, being self-aware. And so how do we become self-aware? You said,
Education is huge. Being open to talking to somebody else. And I think a lot of our self-awareness comes from our relationship with others. If somebody else can point out to us that there's been a shift in something about us, that brings about that self-awareness. And that might be the little key to turn that lock to say, I might need help. But the other thing I want people to remember is that counseling or therapy isn't only when we're feeling bad. It's also a way to stay well.
yeah.
It's
I like
very
that.
preventative, yes. So
Yeah.
it's like going to our annual doctor checkup to make sure we're okay. Well, counseling can be the same thing. I'm okay, but I want to continue that way.
So counseling is just not when you're feeling bad, but consider it preventative medicine. You know, go see someone, have a conversation to download. Definitely download. Again, all of us have been depressed. All of us have experienced some form of trauma. Some individuals way more than others. Way more than others, but we can all use someone to talk to. Dr. Liz, I know you have so much to say about this.
Yeah, before we move along, because I know we're encouraging everyone to kind of reach out and get support, I just wanted to talk and see, Dr. Samantha, if you had any suggestion in regards to resources. There's certain people who may not have insurance. I hear that a lot, where they don't know how to get started because of funding and not having availability. Are there resources that are maybe free or low cost that are available for people who want to get started but don't have the financial means as far as insurance go?
Right. I do know of some local resources at A&M Central Texas. We do have our community counseling and family therapy clinic That's free. So you would need to just call the number and ask to set up an appointment. They are student counselors, but we are supervising them very closely, so you will get top-notch care there. But outside of there are resources at the community. Starry is another one. Starry provides services for children and adolescents, and it's a wonderful resources. Plus, they have offices in different locations to make it easy to access. Because of COVID, a lot of our local resources are providing online counseling, which I envision that staying beyond COVID. It's easier to access for people in rural communities and stuff, so that's helped a whole lot. But if you contact our community counseling clinic and for some reason that's not a good fit for you, we do have a list of resources that we can give you to help you find something in the community as well.
Definitely. And if you're in the Central Texas area, you're also able to call 411, right? Your 411, your helpline at Sitcog in Belton, and they're able to help you with some additional resources as well. Oftentimes, if you call your advocate, your family advocate at any police department, they're able to help you with resources as well. On the screen, you should be seeing the National Suicide Prevention information. If you know someone who is in trouble, who needs some help, you can definitely Google, take a look at some of those resources, or call. It's a 24-hour hotline. If you're still not able to find resources, send us a message in Messenger right here on our Facebook page, and we will connect you with some resources, or just reach out to us at openfireif.org, where it says contact us, please contact us, and someone will reach out to you and send you a link for some resources. By all means, just start. It begins with self-awareness. If more than one person is telling you they see a shift in your behavior, if you feel like you are not engaging in things that you typically enjoy, take a look at yourself and just reach out for someone to talk to. All right. Now, Jeanette, you said it's been a year. It's been a year since you started getting some help, or talk to us about that.
It's been a year since I decided to find a counselor to talk to. And in that year, it's been a struggle because of COVID regulations. And obviously, for my church family knows, I moved here in March. So I'm now looking for another counselor here. But I do still get online and talk to my counselor back home and talk to them. And it's a struggle, though, because 2.5 weeks ago, I was still struggling with depression to where I had suicidal thoughts. The only difference is I'm at a better place in my faith, that I know that God has me no matter what. And so I'm able to get through the suicidal thought part, but I still fight the depression part on a daily, because I still don't feel like I fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to believe that, if I go to counseling, it's going to be an instant fix, and it's really not. And I know something you said earlier was if your friends tell you something. My problem was I had friends that were too afraid to tell me anything. I had to come to the realization, because my husband even said it, I'm a huge sports junkie. Victor has witnessed that today. And I've played football in high school. I played softball in high school. I mean, even post-high school, I was playing on adult softball leagues, and I just completely lost the interest to do any of it. I didn't want to play. I didn't want to do anything. I coached, and the reason I knew I was dealing with my depression really bad after my daughter's suicide attempt, I've coached cheer, dance, and football for over 20 years. And this was the first time that I had no desire to coach. And that for me was heartbreaking, because kids are the future, and I've always wanted to pour back into the kids so they can pour into the future. And I've had great outcomes with that, where I've worked with kids that are now coaching other kids, or they'll call me and they're like, if it's not for you, Coach Jay, I wouldn't be here today. So I've always just, coaching, and to finally get to that place where I had no desire to coach, I knew something was wrong. And we've just been on a steady path, and something that when I work with my kids, and even kids I've coached, when you have a problem and you can address the problem and you can start to get the help, find the tools to help you heal. For me, it's baking. So sorry, church family, y'all gonna get a whole lot of bacon.
Well, the holidays are coming up.
But for me, it's baking has been my tool outside of therapy, because yes, therapy helps, but you obviously can't talk to your therapist 24 hours a day.
Right.
So I had to find something to help keep me going when I couldn't talk to the therapist. And it's been baking, it's been serving the church, which has been a huge, huge help to help me just stay focused and not give in to those suicidal thoughts anymore. But yeah, like I said, November 1st was the first time I went to call a therapist and get help. And hopefully I can find one here that fits me.
What kind of gratification do you get from engaging in those healing activities? Let's talk about the emotions and what, when we connect to something, what we do, what that really does for us.
Baking takes me to a happy place of my childhood. So I have 2 Aunt Lindas. I'm probably weird, but one of we call her Big Aunt Linda. She taught me how to bake when I was from the time I was 3. And so it takes me back to that happy place. And then watching people really enjoy the things that I've created, especially all the ladies here that are on diets. I'm probably the only one. I'm probably the only one that can bake fat-free, sugar-free baked goods, so they can still enjoy baked goods. And to see that and knowing that I'm still helping them once they're on their diet, but they're so excited to get it, just makes me feel like I found a place that I belong.
Acceptance.
Yeah.
Yes, it deals with my abandonment issues, because that's the place where, I'm the baker who can make everybody still happy. So I found a niche, especially, like I said, as a soldier, I'm great. First sergeant, I'm great. I know what I'm doing. I know how to get my soldiers in order. I know how to fire all my weapons. I know how to load all my weapons, because I was a weapons specialist. When I got out, who am I?
I think that's so key. And the reason why I asked you to highlight that is, along this journey, on one end, you shared that you're still struggling with those feelings of depression and suicide. However, when we're able to, we don't have immediate appointment that we can have. What do we do in the meantime? How do we still connect to ourselves so we don't fall too deep in that hole? And so by doing what you just said, engaging in the baking and doing things that provide you that gratification, that this is something I can control and do. That's not me masking it, but me engaging in something and connecting something positive. I'm getting that acceptance that I need. It's so vital and so important. So thank you for sharing. I'd love to ask the rest of the panel that same question for themselves. Tamara, what is your advice and what do you do to help with your healing in a positive way?
Oh, we know I love to sing. I sing. My kids will tell you, I literally sing from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. I probably sing in my sleep. And I love to write. I love to journal. And so those are kind of my go-to things when I feel that my mood shifting. I immediately pick up a pen. I begin to write. I immediately turn on music. I don't care what it may be one day it may be classical music, next day it may be jazz music. I find those things that I love. And then I've got into crafting lately. I've been bedazzling everything. So I really love the craft. And my mom has always been really into plants. And so I kind of created myself a space, and I'm growing my green thumb, and so I've gotten into planting, and so I keep myself busy. Exercise, that's another big one for me. I love to exercise. I love to pop my headphones in and go get on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and just something as simple as going, or going for a walk, simple things like that. I learned that it's the simple things that help us maintain and help us continually overcome depression.
Yeah, that's good. So those day-to-day patterns and habits that occupy our time in a functional way, where we feel like we're doing, we're creating, we're existing, really does make a difference in regards to our healing and our well-being when you're struggling with depression or those suicide thoughts.
And I would also add relationship. It's so important. You have to, when you deal with depression, one of the biggest things that you want to do is isolate yourself. You want to isolate yourself and you want to get bad, and you just want to, oftentimes when you isolate yourself and you deal with depression, you cut everybody off and you sit there with those thoughts. But it's awkward, it's weird, but like for me, I have really found community here at my church. And so, but even being in the house, I went through a period where I would still isolate myself. But I began to force myself to make relationships, because you want people around you who can see that your mood is, you've shifted. But not only do they see when your mood is shifted, but they also can congratulate you when you along your journey. Like, Tam, I see you're like, your countenance is shifted. You're so happy. It's not something you're trying to do. You're like, you're really happy, Tam. Like, you're really upbeat. And so you have, we call them destiny partners. You have people who really, like, they become your cheerleaders, you know? And when you battle with depression, you need positive people around you. You need people who are excited about who you are as a person, and they continually remind you that you are valuable, that you're worthy, that you have so much to offer to the world. And I just encourage you, if you're dealing with depression, get you some people who know who you are, and they see the value that you add to the world. You need those in your life.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, destiny helpers. I love it.
That's
I love
good.
it.
Need a few of those.
Yeah.
How about you, Vic?
For me, I think there's a list of things. I found acting a few years ago, and with acting, being on the stage, it actually, a lot of the stories, I don't know how it's happening this way, but a lot of the stories are relevant to me and to people who are like me. And typically when we tell these stories, it's a piece of the story that everyone can relate to. And I've always had conversations with people. I had a guy walk up to me in an HEB parking lot and talk to me about how he left the play with a message. And he felt moved by whatever the part was. He felt moved by it, and it helped him so much. And he'll never forget my voice in that particular part of the play. But again, I found acting. I started singing a little bit, overcoming some fears with that, and then cooking. I've been cooking since I was 12 years old, and it was a kind of forced element of my life because, like we talked last show, I didn't have my family there a lot. They were dealing with their own demons, and in order for me to eat, I had to cook. And since I was 12 years old, I've developed this passion. And recently I traced it back to a picture of all the women in my life, my grandmothers, my aunts, and two of my cousins, who they were all sitting, and these are all ladies in my life at the time, and they were all sitting down eating a meal that I prepared for them at 12 years old.
Wow.
And I remember these women did not like each other, but I bought them together for Mother's Day, and I remember that feeling that I had, and whenever I cook, I take myself back to that day. Whenever I'm cooking for a big spread for a lot of people, I remember that picture, and it makes me smile. And again, hearing, getting the feedback from people and seeing how much they enjoy it, that's something that makes me happy. It fulfills me. Yeah. So I'm always searching for that positive fulfillment, and whatever it is, in a whatever positive thing that can give me that positive fulfillment. Because there's some things that we do that aren't positive that gives us positive fulfillment. So we have to be careful of those. But any positive thing that gives me positive fulfillment that I found, I try to indulge in that as much as I can.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I love the way that each of you describe, something different that you're doing, but you're able to tap into who you are. You're able to tap into what gives you hope. You're able to tap into what allows you to have engagement, connection with others. A lot of the things that when you go through the period of depression and suicide, you lose that, right? Mm-hmm. But by doing the work, by engaging in the counseling, by, working on the spiritual side of things, and renewing that part of it, you're able to also work on the part of you that taps into who you are, the things that make you happy, the things that, you may have never had the opportunity to explore because of the things that have happened in the past. And so I just love to hear that even though you may still be struggling or dealing with some of those feelings, there is the possibility to still tap into who you are and what gives you hope so that you're able to enable that healing process. So thank you for sharing.
Amen.
That light.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. And I'm just smiling over here, just hearing about all the wonderful food and the bacon, along with the singing. And I'm just so, and I saw your countenance change as you began to talk about what gave you hope, right? As you begin to talk about your process of how you overcome. And so definitely being self-aware. Find a good therapist. You may have to try several times. Find a hobby, right? Something that you enjoy doing. And definitely stay connected. Avoid isolation. Stay connected and have accountability partners. Is that correct, Dr. Samantha?
That's correct. All three of you have one thing in common is you found your purpose.
Yeah.
And purpose gives us hope.
Yes.
And that's what a counselor can do, a therapist can do, is help you either reconnect with your purpose or find your new one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that journey is so hopeful that it'll help you. It's not a magic. You said it. It's not overnight. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It
It's
just
a process.
helps you.
Yeah. It
Engage
helps
in the
you,
process.
and it's definitely a process. Thank you so much for joining us here today and for being so transparent. You'll be back next week, guys, as we end the series on depression and suicidal ideation. Your moms are coming.
So glad mine's
Your
here.
moms are coming. And so make sure you join us next week. Vic and Tamra will be back with their moms as we finish the series of depression and isolation. Again, do connect with a suicide prevention hotline that we have flashed on the screen here for you. And I'm going to leave you with these final words because I hear the word hope. I hear it. Purpose is also, and that's Jeremiah 29:11. The Lord says, "For I know the plans I have towards you. They're plans to prosper and not harm you. They're plans to give you hope for a future." Listen, bad things happen to people. Bad things happen to everybody. But God has a purpose and a plan for you. Yes, you. All right? Join us next week. We will be right back with our series on depression and suicide. I'm Minister Carrie Ann Zamore, and I'm signing off. Good night, everyone.